In a past video, I created a move that was parallel to moves like Psyshock and Secret Sword. Instead of using attack and targeting defense, it would instead use physical attack and target special defense. In that video, we also documented our thought process for creating a move so that we could make the process a nice, neat, repeatable checklist. I should note that a checklist is a list of things that ought to be completed, but I don't specify or believe that it has to be done in that specific order. You may find that you need to hop between a few items on the list to come to a good solution, like a Sudoku puzzle. If you want to see the detailed process, go ahead and check out that video using the card in the top right. I give my reasoning before my proposals because I believe a good process leads to more informed decisions. The people have asked for and suggested that I make a new move, so it's time to break out that move creation checklist and see how it holds up. Commenters on the last video proposed a parallel to the move body press, so that will be today's topic. First on our checklist is the core mechanic of the move. Every move has a core purpose for why it exists after all. Sometimes it can be simple, sometimes it is complex. Bug Buzz's core mechanic was to give the bug type special attackers a good attacking move to account for the physical special split. The side effect of being a sound-based move is a nice little embellishment. Our core purpose is to make a parallel version of body press, so the core mechanic is simple. Body press calculates damage by using defense into defense to deal damage. So our special body press clone will use special defense into special defense to deal damage. Next, we will handle the move's attributes and stats. Since this is easy to get out of the way, Body Press seems to be a pretty healthy move in singles, VGC, and different types of gameplay. It allows defensive Pokemon to be less passive and more threatening, similar to how Seismic Toss guarantees more than just chip damage. AD base power is not too crazy unless you have a disgustingly high defense stat or can boost it with Iron Defense. It's not oppressive because your other moves are not being calculated using defense. Since our new move is a Body Press clone, just special, it would make sense that the power, accuracy, and power points should be about the same. We'll do 80 power, 100% accuracy, and 10 power points. It doesn't make contact. Let's check this off our list. Now we'll discuss the way the move is performed. Body Press justifies its performance by having the user's physical armor and ruggedness be the source of physical damage. I personally would not enjoy being body slammed by a guy in full plate armor. I don't care how little muscle he has, it's going to hurt if gravity or the material does the work for him. To mirror that, we need a move that uses a user's special defense, something that is normally a resistance to the elemental or ethereal, and turn that into a weapon against an opponent. Broadly speaking, if special attack is a damaging beam of energy or damaging mental forces, then special defense is the force shield or mental mitigation of the damage. For the sake of the process, I'm going to refer to this weaponized special defense as just force. Not because I like Star Wars, but it gives us a neutral way to talk about how the move works without involving other factors like type that could bias us. It's tricky because we want a Pokemon's force to interact and deal damage to an opponent without them actually doing a proper special attack. The force could be some kind of passive defensive intensity that is so overwhelming that it damages opponents through their special defense. This would be kind of like in many anime power systems where, independent of what we would call their actual special attacks, they have a special presence that can overwhelm weaker people without launching an attack. For example, in the Hunter x Hunter series, Nen is the power system and it is the life force and aura of living things. Nen can be used consciously and actively to perform impressive physical or special attacks. However, an important aspect of Nen is that it can passively and subconsciously be damaging to one's surroundings. The hostility of someone can exude Nen in such a way that it can weaken or damage the spirit of another person. Even a simple artisan, really invested in their work, can imbue their art with Nen while being completely unaware of the concept of Nen. I'm being vague because it's a good anime and I don't want to spoil it, but hopefully you get the idea. So our move concept could be like this, where the move doesn't attack with force like a classic laser beam that would be a true special attack. It instead passively has the force that it would be using for special defense be overwhelming enough to damage the opponent through their special defense. The other angle that could be taken is the Dragon Ball Z approach, where ki is treated like both energy and a material. You fire it as a beam, and you have it over your body as an armor to deflect ki-based attacks. If you're overwhelmed or poorly guarded, the opponent's ki hits your actual body. When Dragon Ball Z fighters are charging massive amounts of ki, the ki forms a big barrier of ki pressure that forms like a physical crater around them. In Pokemon, this would be like using the extremely strong power that makes Protect block almost any move as a weapon to deal damage. So remember in the anime when Mr. Mime trapped a Hariyama with a bunch of reflect barriers? Good. Now imagine Mr. Mime crushing the Hariyama with the defensive potential of its magic powers as opposed to the offensive potential of its magic powers. It would be a similar application, just translated to be more accurate to the logic within the games. The last angle I'll take, otherwise this video will go on forever, is to suggest that our move causes mental damage. The amount of force our opponent has causes some kind of pressure so strong that it mentally damages the opponent experiencing it. That could be the fear and intimidation of seeing so much force. That can be being corrupted or eroded by the force, or the projection of mentally damaging illusions. This last approach to the move is going to lump together and include all the mental magical things that invade the mind, damage the mind, or mess with the mind if you can't cancel them out. For example, think of things like Harry Potter's legitimacy and occlumency, Naruto's genjutsu, or Jujutsu Kaisen's domain expansions. These all have an odd component of them that suggests that they are not a magical special attack traveling in a 3D space for you to deflect by using your special defense as an external shell to protect you. Instead, these are magics that certainly cause harm, but oddly act like a fight between the wills, minds, or spirits of two beings. There may not be a perceptible location in 3D space or even a difference in 3D spatial positioning between attacker and defender. The attack would effectively be everywhere and nowhere. The damage is only taken when overwhelmed. We've got a lot of potential ways that this could potentially be performed or animated, and that's a good thing. We can continue through the checklist and use other factors to narrow this down into a proper move. Any options we don't use can just be reused and applied to a clone of this new move. This is a good transition into our next section, distribution. I thoroughly examined body press to look for correlations or patterns, intentional or not, that we could apply to our special body press clone. Body press was introduced only as recently as Generation 8 and wasn't even usable in BS Diaper. Yikes, we need a better abbreviation than that. I looked through all the Pokemon that learned Body Press in Generation 8 and 9, looked at a list of Pokemon sorted from highest defense to the lowest for Generation 8 and 9, then cross-referenced them all with other factors like weight and typing. I'm being inclusive because I'm trying to get an idea of what Game Freak is thinking when distributing a new move while accounting for there no longer being a national dex. Actual body weight was not much of a correlation, so I stopped using that as a factor. Here are my insights. There are about 100 species that get body press when we account for new Pokemon gaining access, losing access, or not existing in Generation 9. Of those 100 or so that learn body press, around 70% of them are in the top 300 highest defense stats. If we raise the cutoff to the top 200 and top 100 highest defense stats, we see that around 60% are still present in the top 200 and around 3% are still present in the top 100. Actually, the sweet spot for body press users exists within the range around the 100th to 250th highest defense stats. This is where the bell curve is the highest. Of these high defense Pokemon, and interpreting the data to account for dual types, Steel types get the move most commonly and Rock types are the second most common. This is likely due to their very high defense stats. The third place group are the defensive fighting types like Chestnut or Kommo-o, along with other random high defense Pokemon of whatever type like Dubwool, Avalugg, or Torkoal. Pokemon like Wigglytuff are complete outliers. Do not ask me why someone would put body press on a Wigglytuff when it has 45 defense. For context, Pokemon from 270th to 300th place have around base 80 defense. I know the charts in the background footage may be a little wonky. Some of my formulas and formatting broke when I moved them to Google Sheets, and keep in mind that that I have to interpret the data to account for dual-type Pokemon effectively voting twice. I wasn't sure how to format the Excel to account for that, but since this is just an estimate that we may not even need, and not a body press dissertation, I'm sure we don't need to be pedantic about this. The key takeaway is that body press has a distribution that is highest within the top 300 defense Pokemon, particularly from 100 to 250th place, and that Fighting, Ground, Rock, and Steel commonly get the move. It would be reasonable to say that we could use a similar method to then distribute our special body press clone. Instead of looking at a list of the top 300 most defensive Pokemon and distributing them to firm body Pokemon, we can look at a list of the top 300 most specially defensive Pokemon and distribute to a similar ratio of Pokemon that do, well, whatever mind trickery and battery that we decide is cohesive. Alright, we are so close, and it's looking like this train of thought is going to need us to get into typing to finally close out and finalize what the technique is and how it gets distributed. So I looked at the top 300 specially defensive Pokemon in generations 8 and 9 for consistency with my analysis of body press. I later compared this data to a version that included the Generation 7 national dex, and it looks like it doesn't skew the data enough to matter, so I'm still going to present the original findings. When accounting for dual typings versus monotypings, psychic types have the highest special defense represented, with Fairy being a close second highest. Steel and Dragon are pretty high up there, but since Steel is slapped onto a lot of defensive Pokemon and Dragon is slapped onto many generally high base stat Pokemon, their representation is a little inflated. They also show up as part of a dual typing very frequently, compared to Fairy and Psychic, which are common as monotypes in this top 300. In addition, Steel and Dragon don't suit the vibe of the move we are creating today. The vibe of the move we are creating today is definitely Psychic, Fairy, Dark, Ghost, or maybe Fighting. Psychic deals with mental battles and force-based pressure we need. Fairy is basically a sister type to Psychic and Pokemon, with more of a blatant fairy tale magic theme to it and some trickster elements like charming and manipulating the will or senses. Dark definitely leans into manipulation, deceit, wickedness, and sinister actions. Ghost could do something to mess with the spirit or soul. Fighting obviously has aura and chi to be the equivalent of my Nen and Ki examples. We have a list of Pokemon, so let's start eliminating options. Fighting is getting the cut. The aura and chi, while possible, doesn't suit the Pokemon in either top 300 list. Of the fighting types here, you have Gallade and Mega Mewtwo, and that's really it. No one else wants a fighting move, and of the ones that do, they want the physical body press or to use Aura Sphere or Focus Blast instead. Also, do we really want Ghosts to be immune to both the moves that calculate off of defensive stats? I think not. At least not for the first clone of the move. Dark and Ghost were my next top picks for this because of the sinister auras and life force damage that they could do with their special defense. Dark and Ghost would be the perfect candidates for hostile Nen damage, trapping you in a domain expansion, or ghostly Shadow Realm. Darkrai's Dark Void and Bad Dreams combo is basically a Genjutsu. Unfortunately, there's a distribution problem here. There are not enough defensive Dark or Ghost type Pokemon in this category, nor are there enough non-Dark or Ghost types that could use these. It's surprising how many of these Pokemon don't get Dark coverage outside of something like Bite. Ghost coverage is way better than Dark, but it's heavily outclassed by Shadow Ball in almost every situation looking at this list. I guess Ghost and Dark are more offensive than I really thought they were, almost like their sister types. We can save the Ghost or Dark typing for a signature move that uses this mechanic. Then we don't have to care that the distribution is narrow. Fairy comes in second place once again. The distribution of even the most accessible offensive Fairy moves, like Dazzling Gleam, are mostly limited to Fairies. A fair amount of Psychic types have access, but the Dark and Ghost type tricksters are mostly locked out. Psychic seems like the most viable option here for our new move. As we've already said, Psychic types are the most commonly represented for high special defense, and would easily have justifiable reason to perform a move like this. This already gives us comparable distribution to body press compared to other types. Remember, we have 100 body press Pokemon, so we need easier distribution opportunities. Unlike the issues with Dark, Ghost, and Fairy where they gatekeep each other to an extent, Psychic moves are learned by all these types. Psybeam, Confusion, Psychic, Future Sight, and even Psyshock are learned by many Dark, Ghost, and Fairy types. Many Pokemon Pokemon within these 4 types can also benefit from moves like Calm Mind to boost their special attack and special defense. This lets them boost the power of this new move and their proper special attacks at the same time. Amnesia and Cosmic Power could also be useful, albeit uncommon, combos with this move. We can get a good amount of Psychic, Fairy, Dark, and Ghost types that we have seen learn Psychic moves like the ones I mentioned. Obviously, we can include high BST or exclusive ones like Lugia, Latias, Cresselia, Tapu Fini, Meloetta, or Nihilego. We can include some of the more average Pokemon like Umbreon, Sylveon, Florges, Tentacruel, Oranguru, Spiritomb, or Slowking. Then we can look for the rather overlooked Pokemon like Ledian, Grumpig, Alcremie, and Shiinotic. At least for a starting parallel, Psychic is the best type. The other types can be made into clones of this move later down the line. Okay, now we come full circle back to now how the move should work. Since we know we are doing a Psychic type move this time, and saving the cool Genjutsu and Hostile Nen approach as a surprise Mousketool for a future move, we can go the Psychic route of overwhelming the mind without launching a traditional Psychic attack. Psychic type Pokemon are extremely smart with absolutely ridiculously high IQ levels, and often have access to incomprehensible knowledge that is occasionally beyond even time. They have heightened awareness of things we can't see, sense, or feel. They can read your thoughts and emotions. There's also an element of meditation and enlightenment, being able to manage and store all of that information without losing focus. That extremely organized and efficient mind is a special defense against mental attacks compared to the Psychic special defense barriers that can repel energy-based special attacks like Ice Beams and Thunderbolts. So what if this Psychic move is a Psychic type forcibly making a connection to your mind, and instead of stealing information, it floods your brain with information? It unleashes unbelievably large amounts of data. Some of it is information you cannot comprehend. Some of it is information that can't be processed because you lack the ability to conceptualize what you can't experience. Some of it is information that your body isn't wired to process. All of it is so much information that you lack the experience to organize it. You are at capacity, thinking everything, feeling everything. Your brain is being filled with so much it may as well be nothing. It's not your thoughts anymore. It's a collective. It's not your awareness. It's all perspectives. It's not you anymore. It's infinity. Infinity is you, and infinity is preventing you from perceiving you. It's like teleporting the contents of a pressure cooker into a balloon. The very mental fortitude that makes a specially defensive Psychic's mind effectively an organized and impenetrable Library of Alexandria may as well be a supernova to the special defense of an opponent's mindscape. With that, we finally have checked off technique, distribution, and typing for this special defense on special defense move. Finally, the name. I don't really care about naming things, so I don't think I'm a good judge of quality. I think Mind Break and Mind Crush would be awesome, but they overlap with a certain tag that isn't good for business. Pokemon is a series for good little boys, good little girls, and good little other ones that live in this world, so we should probably choose something else. It could be Mind Press, Mind Flood, Thought Press, Mind Meld, Psycho Press, Mind Blast, Mind Mash, Mind Surge, Psycho Surge, Psyche Press, Psyche Surge, Unbound Mind, Mind Unbind, and so many more. I'm going to call the move Mind Press for logistical reasons, even though I prefer some other ones more. On videos like this, I can see in the analytics that people instantly scrub over and skip straight to the name reveal. So picking very neutral, straightforward names with no spectacle allows me to focus on the parts that interest me more and clearly communicate what the move does to anyone, regardless of how they watch. With that, our checklist is complete. Despite being shorter than the last video I made, it somehow felt longer. Maybe it's because I had to use typing, distribution, and technique together in a cycle to come to a conclusion on the move proposal. Here is our completed move. Mind Press, 80 base power, 100 accuracy, 10 power points. The user overwhelmed the target's mind with surges of incomprehensible information. The higher the user's special defense stat, the greater the damage this move deals. Mind-blowing. By the time you all see this video, it might be June or July, so it would be pretty fun to see that the official games beat us to the punch. I'll be keeping an eye out for Generation 10 trailers and information. Let me know if you like these move proposals, and if you want me to come up with new mechanics or other counterpart moves. Subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to get notified about other videos and projects I have in store for you all. If you want, you can treat me to a cup of chamomile tea using the link in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you some other time. Bye.